I spent the afternoon with an old friend who just moved into one of those high-end smart apartments, the kind where you don't even have to turn a doorknob and the fridge tells you when you're out of kale.
Those.
Exactly. He was lounging on a sofa that probably cost more than my first car, scrolling through a feed of hyper-edited travel videos, a half-eaten stuffed crust pizza on the table. He looked up at me, eyes glazed and dark-circled, and said, "I've never been more comfortable in my life, and I've never felt more like I'm losing my mind."
Wow.
It was a striking image. A man surrounded by every luxury his ancestors would have considered a miracle, yet his body was vibrating with the kind of low-level anxiety you'd expect from someone being hunted by a leopard. He wasn't lazy or broken. He was a biological masterpiece trapped in a gilded cage. We tend to look at the modern plagues, the plummeting fertility rates, the soaring depression, the strange new social movements like lying flat, and we treat them as moral failures or cultural trends.
Right, we pathologize them.
But if you look closer, there's a much colder, more clinical reality at play. A landmark 2026 study out of Loughborough and Zurich suggests we are currently running 50,000-year-old survival software on hardware that was never meant to handle a world of infinite calories and digital light. Our brains are still scanning the horizon for predators while we're just trying to choose a Netflix show. We've successfully engineered a world of total comfort, but in doing so, we've accidentally triggered a behavioral sink that our biology doesn't know how to exit.
A behavioral sink. We're definitely going to have to unpack that one.
We aren't malfunctioning. We are reacting exactly how a Stone Age organism should when it's dropped into an artificial zoo. The question is, can a species designed for the struggle of the savannah actually survive the success of the city?
That image, the man on the sofa, vibrating with anxiety despite the comfort, is honestly the perfect opening for the stack of research we have today. It validates a feeling that I think almost everyone listening has felt at some point. You're sitting there, you're safe, you're fed, the temperature is controlled to the decimal point, and yet your internal alarm system is screaming.
Right. And usually we interpret that as a personal failure. We think, I must be ungrateful, or I need to meditate more, or I need a better therapist. But the sources we're diving into today are arguing something much more fundamental.
Something deeper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're saying, stop psychologizing it for a second and look at the biology.
We need to talk about the environment of evolutionary adaptedness, or the EEA. It's a term evolutionary biologists use constantly, but it gets misunderstood a lot.
Okay, let's unpack that immediately, because when I hear evolutionary adaptedness, I start picturing guys in loincloths spearing mammoths and everyone being happy and ripped.
The Flintstones fallacy.
Is this just a fancy way of saying caveman good, modern man bad? Because I like penicillin and I like my iPhone.
No, and that's the most important distinction to make right up front. The EEA isn't a specific time period. It's not the Garden of Eden.
So not a golden age.
Well, it wasn't better in the sense of comfort. Brutal. You died of dental infections at 20. You got eaten by predators. Your life was, to quote Hobbes, nasty, brutish, and short.
So it's not nostalgia. We're not advocating for a return to some imagined past.
Not on the slightest.
Yeah.
The EEA is a statistical composite of the environmental pressures that shaped our genome. Think of it less as a place and more as a list of problems.
Okay, big kind of problems.
For 99% of human history, the problem was calorie scarcity, immediate physical danger, and small, tight-knit social groups. Your software, your brain, your nervous system, your gut was written over millions of years to solve those problems.
And now, in the blink of an eye, evolutionarily speaking, we've flipped the script.
Completely inverted it. We've gone from scarcity to abundance, from danger to safety, and from tribes of 50 to cities of millions. So when we say your software is misfiring, we aren't saying you're broken. We're saying you are a perfectly tuned machine operating in an environment that makes zero sense to your operating system.
It's like taking a Formula One car, which is a masterpiece of engineering, and trying to drive it off-road through a swamp. The car isn't broken, it's just in the wrong place.
And the car will destroy itself trying to navigate that swamp. That's what we're seeing in the data. We have this stack of papers covering everything from epigenetics to rat psychology to sociology, and they all point to 3 specific mismatches where the swamp is destroying the engine.
Right. We've got the metabolic mismatch, which is our internal environment, the density mismatch, which is our physical social environment, and the status mismatch, which is our psychological abstract environment. A 3-front war against our own biology.
And the first front is arguably the most invisible, but the most damaging. It's happening inside your cells right now.
The internal fire. This brings me to a story that really stuck with me from the reading. It's about a guy in Seoul. I heard a story recently about a young researcher in Seoul, a city where the neon never sleeps and the convenience stores are always within a 3-minute walk.
The height of convenience.
The very definition of it. He spent his days studying life history theory, but his own life was a quiet casualty of the very mismatch he researched. Living in a tiny goziwan, one of those shoebox apartments, he survived on ultra-processed convenience meals and the blue light of a dual monitor setup.
Quickly.
His body, governed by a Pleistocene genome that expects rhythmic darkness and nutrient-dense foraging, began to misinterpret this modern saturation as a state of permanent emergency.
The body doesn't know it's just a Tuesday night. It thinks it's a crisis.
Right. The chronic low-grade inflammation from his erratic sleep and high-sugar diet wasn't just making him tired. It was a biological signal telling his endocrine system that the environment was too hostile for offspring. To his body, the famine was hidden in the feast.
The famine hidden in the feast.
When he looked at his dwindling lab results, he realized his fitness wasn't failing. It was simply trading off. His biology was diverting every ounce of energy towards surviving the internal wildfire of inflammation, leaving nothing for the future.
A strategic retreat.
The haunting irony, isn't it? As a creator who spends way too much time under studio lights, I feel this deeply. We think we're thriving because we have 247 access to calories, but our cells are actually in a defensive crouch.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that our health isn't just about willpower. It's an ancient conversation between our DNA and a world that's changed too fast for it to understand.
The famine hidden in the feast.
That is such a paradoxical concept, but it completely explains the physiological state of modern humans. We need to dig into why his body, and probably yours and mine, is making that calculation. It starts with life history theory.
Which, despite the name, isn't about writing your memoir. It sounds like something you'd study in an English class. No, it's economics, biological economics. The core premise is that energy is finite. You do not have an unlimited budget of ATP energy in your body. You have to allocate it.
Right. There's no biological credit card.
None. You have a fixed budget. And there are two main departments competing for that budget.
Okay, for me. Who are the department heads fighting for funding?
Department A is somatic maintenance. That's keeping you alive right now. It's your immune system. It's fighting infections, repairing tissue, keeping your heart beating. It's day-to-day survival.
Okay, so somatic maintenance is like fixing the roof and paying the electric bill. Basic upkeep.
Department B is reproductive effort. That's the long-term project. It's finding a mate, producing gamete sperm or eggs, and rearing offspring.
So reproductive effort is like building a nursery addition on the house, a future investment.
Now, what happens if your house catches fire?
I stop building the nursery. I take every penny I have and I buy fire extinguishers. The future doesn't matter if the present is burning down.
Life history theory dictates that survival always trumps reproduction. If the body thinks it is dying or under attack, it shuts down the reproductive system to save energy for the fight. It pulls all funding from the nursery and gives it to the fire department.
The problem is, for that researcher in Seoul, and for most of us, the fire isn't a tiger or a plague.
Oh.
It's a spicy chicken sandwich from the convenience store.
That's the mismatch. The alarm system is perfectly calibrated for the savannah, but it's wildly oversensitive to the threats of the modern world. It can't tell the difference between a mortal danger and a high-fructose corn syrup-laden snack.
This is where we get to that terrifying acronym from the study, GELDING.
Yes.
G-E-L-D-I-N-G. Did the scientists sit around laughing when they came up with that? It's a bit on the nose, considering it's about male infertility.
Scientists have a darker sense of humor than people realize. I promise you they knew exactly what they were doing with that one. It stands for gut endotoxin leading decline in gonadal function. Accurate. It describes a specific chain reaction. It starts with what you eat. The modern diet, high fat, high sugar, ultra processed, low fiber, does physical damage to the lining of the gut.
We hear about leaky gut on health blogs all the time, and it sounds kind of vague, but biologically, what is actually leaking?
Okay, so imagine your gut lining is a fortress wall made of bricks. The bricks are your intestinal cells. And in between the bricks is mortar, which biologists call tight junctions.
Okay, a fortress wall. It keeps the bad guys out.
It keeps the trillions of bacteria in your intestines inside the intestines where they belong. But processed foods, emulsifiers, high sugar loads, they act like acid rain on the mortar. They weaken those tight junctions.
The wall starts to crumble.
Exactly. And when that wall breaches, bacteria and their byproducts slip through into the bloodstream, specifically something called lipopolysaccharides, or LPS. Think of LPS as a chemical distress flare. It's a toxin found in the outer cell walls of certain bacteria. When your immune system detects even a trace amount of LPS in the blood, it assumes you have a massive, life-threatening infection.
It doesn't know you just ate a donut. It thinks, we have septicemia, the fortress has been breached by an army.
So the alarm bells go off, all hands on deck. The body launches a full-scale inflammatory response.
And this is the metabolic endotoxemia the study talks about.
That's the one. The immune system floods the body with leukocytes and reactive oxygen species, ROS. These are like biological flamethrowers designed to kill bacteria.
But there are no bacteria to kill, just the remnants of lunch.
Right. But the flamethrowers are out, and this leads to widespread oxidative stress. This is the scorched earth defense. The immune system is burning down the village to save it.
And sperm cells get caught in the fire.
They get caught in the fire. And here's where the tragedy happens. Sperm cells are incredibly sensitive to oxidative stress. Their DNA is fragile. When the body is in this state of chronic low-grade inflammation, this internal fire, the sperm gets caught in the crossfire.
So it's collateral damage.
It's worse. It's a strategic withdrawal. The body isn't just accidentally damaging sperm, it's actively shutting down the production line. The body's logic is, the environment is clearly toxic. We're fighting a war. This is a terrible time to reproduce. We might create damaged offspring, or we might die in the process, shut down the factory.
So the plummeting sperm counts we're seeing globally. It's not just chemicals in the water or plastics. It's our own bodies making a decision based on the food we eat.
It is a logical, adaptive response to a signal of toxicity. The study on infertile men showed a direct dose-dependent correlation, higher body mass index, and higher serum zonulin, which is a marker that measures that gut leakiness equaled higher sperm DNA fragmentation.
So the leakier your gut, the more scrambled your sperm DNA.
Yes. The more inflamed you are, the more your body sabotages your own fertility. It's a self-gelding mechanism triggered by diet.
That is incredibly bleak. That's right. The epigenetic clock. Because the stack includes that paper from UCLA about aging. This isn't just about making babies, it's about how we fall apart.
This is where it gets really interesting and maybe a little scary. We used to think you just aged. Your whole body got old at the same speed, like a car.
All the parts wear out together.
Right. But the study found that different tissues age at different rates depending on the specific stressors they're exposed to. They compared buccal cells' cheek swabs to sperm cells from the same men.
Cheek versus sperm, too.
Because your cheek cells are a good proxy for your overall systemic age. Your sperm cells are a specific readout of your reproductive system's health. They wanted to see if there was a difference.
Yes.
A huge one. They looked at methylation. To put it simply, imagine your DNA is a giant piano. The keys are the genes. Methylation is like putting a piece of tape over a key so it can't be played. It turns the gene off. It's a critical part of how your body regulates itself.
Okay, so you have all these genes, but most of them are silenced by this methylation tape.
Exactly. You don't want your liver cells trying to act like brain cells. The tape keeps everything in its proper place. But as we age or get chronically stressed and inflamed, the tape starts falling off.
The wrong keys start playing.
This is called hypomethylation. Specifically, inflammatory genes that should be off most of the time get turned on permanently. It's like a stuck key on the piano playing a note of inflammation over and over.
The software gets corrupted.
What they found was that in these inflamed men, their cheek cells looked relatively young. Their chronological age matched their biological age, but their sperm cells showed massive epigenetic aging.
What does that mean, epigenetic aging?
It means the pattern of methylation on the sperm DNA looked like that of a much, much older man. The reproductive system was aging decades faster than the rest of the body.
So I could look in the mirror, see a 30-year-old face, feel relatively okay, but my reproductive system could effectively be 60 years old.
According to this data, yes, it is the canary in the coal mine.
Wow.
The reproductive system is the first thing to collapse when the environment is bad because, from an evolutionary perspective, it's a luxury. Your body will sacrifice your fertility to keep your heart beating. So if your sperm is showing this accelerated aging, it's a bright red warning light that your ancient hardware believes you are living in a disaster zone.
And it's not just the food. The researcher in our story, he was also dealing with the blue light, the lack of sleep. That's another mismatch.
It's the cumulative load. Sleep deprivation is a huge one. In the EEA, when the sun went down, you slept. Your body produced melatonin, it repaired itself. Now, we blast our retinas with blue light from screens until 2 a.m.
I'm guilty of that.
The research shows this directly reduces histoneacetylation, which is another one of those gene-regulating mechanisms, and it spikes that same oxidative stress we were just talking about. Your body interprets an all-nighter as a sign you're being hunted. You're staying awake because there's a predator outside the cave.
So it's another signal for the fire department to come out.
And then there's pollution.
Right.
PM 2.5 exposure, the fine particulate matter in city air, directly correlates with reduced methylation of key inflammatory genes like TNF-alpha. So you breathe the city air, you eat the processed food, you stare at the screen.
And your cells conclude that you are living in a hellscape.
A hellscape where it would be profoundly irresponsible to bring a child into the world. That is the metabolic mismatch. We have created a world of comfort that our biology interprets as a crisis.
Heavy. It reframes the whole wellness conversation from vanity to, well, literal survival of the species. But okay, that's the internal world. That's what's happening inside the skin. But we also have to talk about what happens when you take that Stone Age brain and shove it into a city of 10 million people.
The density mismatch.
Right. This brings us to story number 2. And if the first one was about biological burnout, this one is about social implosion.
Yeah.
I was reading a thread online about the Hikikomori phenomenon in Tokyo, but viewed through a lens I hadn't considered, the behavioral sink.
Calhoun?
Exactly. There was a profile of a man named Kenji who lived in a high-rise in Shinjuku, surrounded by millions of people but speaking to none. In a hyper-dense, resource-redundant environment of the modern Megacity, the sheer computational cost of navigating social hierarchies became a debt he couldn't pay.
The processing power just wasn't there.
Every stroll down a crowded street was a barrage of status cues and social threats his brain had to process. Eventually, Kenji's biology triggered a de-escalation strategy. It wasn't laziness, it was a protective shutdown.
A circuit breaker tripped.
By withdrawing to his room and abandoning the pursuit of a partner or a career, he was unconsciously responding to density-dependent selection. His lizard brain signaled that the colony was overpopulated and resources were redundant, so the most adaptive move was to stop competing entirely. He became a ghost in the machine, a living example of a biological off-switch triggered by the urban hive.
A ghost in the machine. It's a perfect phrase for it.
My take on this is, well, I've seen some pretty heated debates online framing this as a moral failing or a weak generation.
Of course, kids these days.
Right. But looking at it as a biological retreat changes the vibe completely. It's a heavy realization that our cities might be reaching a psychological carrying capacity.
They absolutely might be.
And while the Hikikomori lifestyle is an extreme, we've all felt that urge to delete every app and just disappear. It's not just social anxiety.
Yeah.
It might be our ancient hardware trying to save us from a system that's just too loud.
That phrase, a ghost in the machine, is perfect because Kenji isn't an anomaly. He is the human version of a phenomenon we've known about in biology for 60 years. We have to talk about the rats.
The famous rat utopia experiments, John B. Calhoun. This is one of the most disturbing and fascinating series of experiments ever done.
John B. Calhoun, in the 1960s at the National Institute of Mental Health, he built what he thought was a paradise. He was trying to study overcrowding, so he created an enclosure called Universe 25.
Paint the picture for us. What did this universe look like?
Imagine a massive box about 10 feet square, divided into 16 pens. It had unlimited food hoppers that were always full, unlimited water dispensers, perfect climate control, no predators, no disease, a rat heaven.
So physically, they wanted for nothing. All their material needs were met infinitely.
And at first, they thrived. He introduced 4 breeding pairs. The population exploded. They were happy. They formed social structures. It was going great. But then the box got full.
And just to be clear, they didn't run out of food or water.
Never. The hoppers were always full. They ran out of space. They ran out of social buffer. They couldn't get away from each other. And that's when the behavioral sink started.
This is where the descriptions get like a horror movie. It's a complete social breakdown.
The social fabric disintegrated. You had dominant males become hyper-aggressive, forming gangs that would attack others for no reason. You had mothers abandoning their infants or even attacking them. Cannibalism became common. The whole society just collapsed into chaos.
But there were specific archetypes that emerged from this chaos, right?
And this is where it gets so chillingly relevant to us. The most famous archetype, the one that maps to Kenji, were the beautiful ones.
The beautiful ones. God, even the name is eerie. It sounds like a cult.
These were male rats who looked physically perfect. They had no scars because they never fought for territory or mates. Their fur was sleek and well kept because they spent all day grooming themselves. But they were hollow.
What do you mean hollow?
They withdrew completely from society. They didn't engage in mating. They didn't defend territory. They didn't fight. They just ate, slept, and groomed. They were socially dead.
They opted out.
They opted out. In a high-density environment, the stress of constant social interaction, the fighting for status, the navigating of hierarchies became so computationally expensive that their brains just clicked off. They became narcissistically withdrawn.
And looking at Kenji in Shinjuku, or honestly, looking at any of us doom scrolling in bed on a Friday night instead of going out, are we becoming the beautiful ones?
We see this withdrawal everywhere, and the study from Singapore on Hikikomori helps us bridge the gap between rats and humans because it adds a cultural layer.
Right, because Singapore is even more dense than Tokyo in many ways.
It is, but it's different. The study talks about the floor effect.
Yeah.
In Japan, if you want to withdraw, you can often physically isolate yourself in your own room or apartment. In Singapore, housing is so expensive and culturally tied to family Confucian filial piety is a huge deal that most people live with their parents until their mid-30s.
So you literally cannot lock yourself away as easily.
Right. It creates a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
The study looked at social withdrawal tendencies even when people were physically present with their families.
So you're at the dinner table, but you're not there. You're a beautiful one on the inside.
Internal withdrawal. And they found that the key predictive factor was emotional suppression. The constant effort of regulating your emotions, of putting on a face in a high-pressure, high-density environment leads to a total system shutdown.
It's just too much work to feel anything.
It's too much work, and this connects directly to the concept of intraspecific competition.
Competition within the species.
Right. In the EEA, back in the tribe of, say, 150 people, you practiced what's called contest competition. You knew everyone. You had a clear hierarchy. You could win some status battles, lose others. The social map was understandable.
But in a megacity, or worse, on the internet.
It's not contest competition anymore. It's scramble competition. You are competing with millions of unseen rivals for jobs, mates, and status. The hierarchy is impossibly steep and abstract. You open Instagram, and you are immediately competing with the most beautiful, successful, wealthy people on the entire planet.
And your brain, your Stone Age brain, does a quick calculation. What are the odds of winning that competition?
0. The odds are functionally 0. So what does a rational biological system do when faced with a competition it cannot win?
It doesn't play.
It doesn't play. It triggers a de-escalation strategy. This is a biological safety valve we see all over the animal kingdom.
The wolf example.
The wolf example. If a smaller, weaker wolf challenges the alpha and realizes in the first 2 seconds he's going to get ripped apart, he doesn't fight to the death. He immediately rolls over and exposes his throat. He goes limp. He signals, "I am not a threat. Do not hurt me. I surrender."
That's lying flat. That's the Chinese social movement.
That is exactly what lying flat or rot culture or hikikomori is. It is a preemptive surrender to avoid the psychological and social damage of a competition you cannot win. It's not laziness. It's a desperate, adaptive attempt to conserve energy and stay safe in a social environment that feels overwhelmingly hostile.
It's safe mode, like when your computer crashes and it reboots with just the basic functions to avoid further damage.
Exactly. We are running society in safe mode because the density and the hyper-competition are overheating our processors. We simply don't have the bandwidth to process 10,000 faces a day and a million status updates.
So we have the internal inflammation shutting down our fertility. We have the external density shutting down our social drive. But then there's this third group, the people who don't withdraw, the people who are still trying to win the game.
The probers in Calhoun's rat term, or just the ambitious modern human.
But the game has changed. We don't signal status with simple things anymore. We've moved into this weird, abstract world. Which brings us to the third mismatch.
The status mismatch. And this one might be the most controversial.
Let me set the scene with our third story.
Do.
Try to imagine a dinner party in a tech-saturated hub, like San Francisco or London, where the guests aren't showing off Rolexes, but rather luxury beliefs. I saw a commentary on this recently regarding a high-level executive who championed radical, ideologically extreme positions that would, in practice, be disastrous for the working class, the very people he claimed to represent. But for him, these beliefs were a costly signal. In a post-scarcity digital world where anyone can buy a fake designer bag, physical status symbols have lost their handicap value.
They've been democratized, so they're worthless for signaling elite status.
Exactly. Instead, he displayed his high cognitive resources in Social Security by adopting ideas so socially expensive and impractical that only someone with immense buffer could afford to hold them.
The belief itself becomes the luxury good.
It was the modern equivalent of a peacock's tail. He wasn't looking for truth. He was signaling that he was so well-resourced that he didn't need to worry about the real-world consequences of his ideology.
A powerful idea.
This one is a bit of a pill to swallow. As a journalist, I see these virtue signals fly across my feed every day. It's easy to get angry at the hypocrisy, but from an evolutionary perspective, it's just the same old status game played on a new abstract battlefield.
A game never changes, just the playing field.
Right. While some of these luxury beliefs can feel polarizing or even elitist, they represent a fundamental human need to be seen as top tier. We've just traded feathers and gold for complex, often fragile ideas. It's a strange digital evolution of the ego.
Beliefs. This is a concept popularized by the writer Rob Henderson, and it creates a lot of friction because it feels like a political attack.
When I first read this part of the research, I bristled a bit. It felt like a way to just dismiss people who actually care about social issues as show-offs. Is that what this theory is saying? That nobody actually cares, they're just peacocking?
That's a valid reaction and an important one. We have to be very careful here. The theory isn't necessarily about the sincerity of the belief. The origin of a belief might be genuine empathy, but the social function of that belief can still be status signaling regardless of intent.
Okay, so intent versus function.
Exactly. Evolution doesn't care about your sincerity, it cares about the signal you send. And to understand this, we have to go back to the handicap principle.
Okay, let's break that down.
The handicap principle was developed by a biologist named Ahmet Zahavi. He was trying to figure out why animals evolve traits that seem to be actively harmful to their survival, like the peacock's tail.
Right, it's huge, it's heavy, it makes it hard to fly. It's basically a giant eat-me sign for tigers.
Correct. But its very costliness is the signal. A peacock that can survive despite having this ridiculous, cumbersome tail must be incredibly fit. He's signaling to the peahens, I have such good genes. I can afford to waste resources on this beautiful, useless thing.
Flex.
It's the ultimate flex. And for a signal to work, it has to be costly. If a sick, weak peacock tried to grow a big tail, he'd be eaten immediately. The signal relies on the handicap.
So how do we get from peacocks to dinner parties in San Francisco?
Well, for most of human history, we signaled with physical prowess. Then, as we got civilized, we signaled with stuff, material goods. The economist Thorstein Veblen called this conspicuous consumption over a century ago.
Top hats, monocles, powdered wigs.
Spices. Spices is a great example from the research. In the Middle Ages, pepper and cinnamon were worth more than gold. They were incredibly expensive. So serving a heavily spiced dish was a huge flex. It said, look how rich I am. I can afford to literally eat treasure.
But then trade routes opened up. Spices became cheap.
Exactly. The price crashed. Suddenly, even peasants could afford pepper. So what did the French aristocracy do? Did they keep eating spice because they liked the taste? No, they banned it. The court of Louis XIV switched to emphasizing fresh herbs and natural flavors.
Because if the poor can do it, it's no longer an elite status signal.
It loses its handicap value. The same thing happened with dueling. It was an aristocratic practice until the lower classes started doing it, at which point the elites made it illegal.
So fast forward to 2026. We are in a world of fast fashion. I can buy a knockoff Gucci bag that looks 99% real. I can get a giant flat-screen TV for $200. Material goods are losing their handicap value. They're too cheap to be reliable signals of elite status.
We are post-scarcity for stuff. So the elites need a new way to distinguish themselves. They need a new, unfakeable top hat. And according to Henderson's theory, that new top hat is beliefs.
But how is an opinion expensive? Opinions are free. I can have 5 of them before breakfast.
But specific opinions are expensive. To hold a luxury belief, you need 2 things that are hard to get. First, you need education and leisure.
Okay.
You need the time and resources to learn the ever-changing vocabulary of the elite. Knowing the correct, up-to-the-minute terms, heteronormative, cultural appropriation, intersectionality, whatever the new phrase is next month, signals that you went to an elite university and have the leisure time to read academic theory.
It's a linguistic entrance exam.
That's the entry fee. Again, security. You need to be so insulated from the real world that you can afford the consequences of your beliefs.
So this is the defund the police example the text brings up. And again, we need to be clear, we're analyzing this as a signal, not a political position.
Absolutely. We are looking at the function. If you are a tech CEO living in a gated community with a private security team, advocating for the abolition of public police costs you absolutely nothing. It's a jump in the air. You are signaling, I am so secure, I am so safe, I don't even need the basic functions of the state.
But for a working class person, say a single mom living in a high crime neighborhood,
for her, that belief is lethally expensive. She can't afford to hold it because she and her children bear the direct physical consequences. The very costliness of the belief to the poor is what gives it value as a status signal for the rich.
it's the luck versus hard work paradox too, isn't it? The research on that was wild.
Yes. There's a fascinating study showing that the wealthier and more educated you are, the more likely you are to say success is due to luck. The working class, conversely, overwhelmingly attributes success to hard work.
Which sounds completely counterintuitive. You'd think the rich guy would want to take all the credit. I built this. I'm a genius.
But false modesty is the ultimate luxury. If you have already made it, dismantling the concept of individual agency is cheap. Oh, it was just the universe. I was lucky. But if you are poor, you must believe in the power of hard work. You need that belief in agency just to get out of bed in the morning.
So telling a poor person hard work is a myth, it's all luck, is actually a devastating message.
It's psychologically crippling. So the elite signals their high status by adopting a worldview that undermines the very mechanism of success, proving they are now above the need for it.
The same way the French court abandoned spices, they no longer needed to prove their wealth.
It functions as a status marker because it is risky or harmful for the lower classes to adopt, but safe for the upper classes. It is the new exclusionary country club. You don't get kept out by a gate. You get kept out by not knowing the right shibboleths or by not being able to afford the consequences of the ideas.
Now, to be fair, the materials did mention some critiques of this idea. Jessica Gross at the New York Times, for instance, has argued this is just a right-wing caricature, that people genuinely hold these beliefs.
Yes, and that's the nuance we need to hold on to. Again, it's not about sincerity. People can be completely sincere, but the effect can still function as a status marker. The French aristocrat might have genuinely come to believe that pepper was vulgar. That doesn't change the fact that his newfound belief served to distinguish him from the commoners. The human drive for distinction, as the sociologist Bourdieu called it, is immutable.
The game is the game.
The game is the game. If we can't distinguish ourselves with money, we will distinguish ourselves with moral purity or intellectual complexity, creating a hierarchy that is just as exclusionary. And our Stone Age brains are exhausted trying to keep up with the rules of a game that changes every day.
We are looking at this artificial zoo. It's not one single thing, it's a system.
It's a synthesis of all three fronts of this war against ourselves.
Together.
Yeah.
We have the physiological mismatch. Our modern diet and sleep patterns are creating an internal famine, causing our bodies to shut down reproduction via the gelding mechanism and accelerated epigenetic aging.
Our bodies think we're starving and under attack.
We have the spatial mismatch. The sheer density of our cities is triggering a behavioral sink, forcing us into a psychological safe mode and social withdrawal, just like Calhoun's beautiful ones.
Our social circuits are overloaded and burning out.
And we have the social mismatch. The loss of material scarcity has driven us into a high-stakes, confusing, and abstract game of ideological signaling luxury beliefs to prove our worth in a world where a Rolex means nothing.
And running underneath all of this, the hum of the refrigerator in the background, is the smoke detector principle.
We touched on this, but let's really land it. Why do we feel this constant low-grade anxiety your friend described?
Because your brain is designed to be paranoid. It's a feature, not a bug. Imagine you are on the savannah 50,000 years ago. You hear a rustle in the tall grass.
Okay.
You have two choices. Choice A, you think it's probably just the wind and you keep walking. Choice B, you think it's a lion and you run away like hell.
Well, if I choose A and I'm wrong?
Your lunch. Ed, your genes are removed from the pool. Story.
If I choose B and I'm wrong?
You feel a little silly. You look around, see it was just the wind. Your heart rate goes down. You wasted 50 calories running. That's the total cost.
So nature selects for the cowards, the ones who run first and ask questions later.
Nature selects for the paranoid, The cost of a false positive thinking there's a lion when there isn't is tiny. The cost of a false negative thinking it's the wind when it's a lion is fatal. So we are the descendants of millions of generations of hyper-anxious people who saw lions in every shadow.
But now, we live in a world with no lions.
But the rustle is still there. The rustle is an email from your boss with no subject line. The rustle is a weird look from a stranger on the subway. The rustle is a news alert on your phone. And your 50,000-year-old brain screams, lion.
So my brain is basically a smoke alarm that goes off every time I make toast.
Worse. It's a smoke alarm that goes off when you think about making toast. And unlike a real alarm, you can't take the batteries out. That low-level vibration your friend felt on his hyper-expensive sofa, that's the smoke detector stuck in the on-end position.
At least to know it's a mechanism, not a flaw in my character.
Yeah.
It's not me, it's my programming.
Sure. But it's a feature that requires a level of management and self-awareness our ancestors never needed.
From the microscopic methylation of sperm DNA to the macroscopic collapse of rat utopias and the abstract world of luxury belief systems.
It's a bleak picture in many ways, but I think there is one final thought that really drives this home that puts it all into a kind of tragic perspective. Evolution is indifferent to your happiness. It only cares about your replication. We have successfully engineered a civilization of unprecedented comfort, safety, and abundance, solving almost every problem our ancestors died trying to fix. And yet, we remain inhabited by a soul shaped for the struggle of a lost savanna. The central tragedy of the 21st century isn't that we are failing, it's that we have succeeded so completely that we no longer know how to be the animal we were designed to be.